Today, we are privileged to have Dr. Chetna Dhan among us. She's a senior scientist in CSIR AMPRI, Bhopal. She served as a postdoctoral research fellow at Singapore Eye Research Institute, Singapore, and adjunct assistant professor at the ACP in Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences, Duke, NUS, Singapore. She has completed her PhD in chemistry from University of Delhi and NPL, India. She is a recipient of Young Investigator Award in 2016, Singh Health Publish Award 2016, and Singh International Research Paper Reviewed Public Health Award. Her excellent research credentials reflect by 57 international research peer-reviewed journals, 3 book chapters, 2 international patents, which attracted 2466 citations, and 25 is the age index, which is very high. She is a reviewing editor for biomedical technology. Dr. Chetna's major research interests include nanobiomaterials, bio-inspired catecholamine chemistry, antimicrobial materials, including antimicrobial food packaging, antimicrobial wound dressing, antimicrobial hydrogel, etc., antimicrobial coatings, miniaturized electrochemical sensor, biosensor for early tuberculosis diagnosis, microfluidics technology, 3D printing of biopolymers, targeted drug delivery, tissue engineering, and related healthcare applications. So it's beyond, I think, the explanation. It's a very, very impressive CV. And most interestingly, ma'am has done some work on contact lens, and mainly is the title itself tell that self-defensive coating material. So let's welcome all uh, to Dr. Chetna in this webinar series. So Dr. Chetna, now you can go ahead.
Yeah. So, can you hear me? I'm audible?
Yes, you are
Yes, ma'am, you're
audible.
audible.
Okay.
Continue.
So, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Sudeshna for such a warm welcome in the webinar. And then also for this nice introduction. And then also to all the panelists for giving me such a warm welcome in the webinar. And then also I welcome all the attendees who are actually joined to with the hope that they are going to learn something from this particular lecture. So with this, I think I should start with my lecture. So I will just make my video off so that I think there will be more connectivity, I think. So I
Yes,
will
ma'am.
just make my video off and I will start my presentation. So are the slides visible?
Yes, ma'am. Visible.
Okay. So, so today the title of my talk is first of all, let's start with my introduction. So I am Dr. Chetna Dhan. I am working as a senior scientist at CSIR AMPRI Bhopal. And today's my lecture is on self-defensive antimicrobial coatings for infection prevention. So I think regarding the introduction to our institute, I think in the last lecture, Dr. Gaurav Gupta have already covered all those things. So I'm not going to repeat them. So I will just directly go to my, the research work which we have done in this particular area. So just to start with, I want to give a brief introduction that what are actually these antimicrobial coatings are. So antimicrobial coating is actually the surface modification of the surface using some antimicrobial factors that actually inhibit the ability of microorganisms to attach or grow on the material surface. So as you know, I think these coatings are very important in the present scenario where we are seeing that we are actually worried, we are actually afraid of touching any surface. They are saying that clean your hands, sanitize it very frequently. Why? Because these microbes, they or the particularly in present situation, the COVID-19 virus, what they are saying is that they can actually, when we are sneezing or speaking, if we are actually the COVID positive, by ear, these viruses, they can actually fall into these surfaces and they can start growing on it. And if we touch it, so it can actually, through our hands or other agents, it can actually come inside our body also. So this is a very good example where actually these antimicrobial coatings are needed for the surfaces. So there are different mechanisms by which these coatings, they prevent the microbes, kill the microbes, or they prevent the microbes to attach on the surface. You can see here that here in A case, it can repel the bacteria by exclusion steric repulsion, or there can be electrostatic repulsion between the surface and the microbes, so it actually prevent the attachment. Then there is hydrophobic coatings also, which actually provides low energy surfaces, where the microbes, they actually don't able to attach on the surface, so slowly it actually leach out from the surface. Or there can be some active or biocidal mechanisms also, where actually when bacteria attach on the surface, there are some antimicrobial agents which actually release out from the surface and it kills the bacteria. So it is an active mechanism. And in another case, in E, you can see that here what happened, although the antimicrobial component don't leach out, but as soon as the bacteria comes on the surface, it actually by contact itself, the surface will kill the bacteria. So there are different mechanisms by which these coatings work. So what if we don't have the antimicrobial surfaces? So this is how the things happen. The microbes, they actually attach the surface. After that, they actually aggregate and they grow in colonies. And after that, once they grow, multiply, numerous times, they actually create biofilms. So this is very dangerous because a single microbe, or you can say the planktonic bacteria, you can actually handle by using the antibiotics and all those things, you can still handle them. But once they come to a biofilm form, it's very difficult to actually eradicate these microorganisms, because they are actually protected by an extracellular protein layer. So it's very difficult. So once the biofilms, they mature, they will again burst, and then the bacteria again dispersed out in the planktonic form, and they contaminate the other surfaces. So one of the very important point I want to highlight here, I think maybe many of the audience, they maybe know about the antibiotic resistance, which is actually the phenomenon is normal bacteria, they can be easily killed by the antibiotics. As we all know, any viral contamination or bacterial contamination, if we go to the doctor, they give antibiotic, and the microbes can be killed. But now slowly what is happening is these bacteria, they are getting resistance to the antibiotics. Means due to the overdosage of the antibiotics, or you can say over usage of the antibiotics, these bacteria, they are actually slowly getting mutated, and now the new bacterial strains, they are actually resistant to the antibiotics. So this is a very big global health issue, that the bacteria is getting resistant to the antibiotic, and there is a now emergence of superbugs which are not killed by any of the antibiotics. So that is why the work I'm showing here, we are actually designing most of the coatings, we are designing by using some natural compounds, or we want to actually restrict the use of antibiotics in these coatings. So they are actually antibiotic free coatings we are preferring to design. So you can see here, this is a rough estimate, which is recently in 2014 they have published that by if we will be using the antibiotic with the same pace. So by 2050, you can see that how many number of deaths can be possible in the different regions of the world. So the number is actually quite you can say we are worried about it. So somehow we need to control the use of antibiotics. We need to think of some natural antimicrobials. We need to think about the alternatives, some good antimicrobial alternatives which we can use over the antibiotics. So these are some of the applications of the antimicrobial coatings. Any I mean field we can actually think of, these coatings have implications. You can see the medical devices. So medical devices including the catheters, the contact lenses, the cardiac stents. So as soon as we put those devices into the body, there are high chances that they will get contaminated, and of course that the contamination, it will create infection in your bodies. So we need some kind of antimicrobial coatings on the medical devices. Same way food packaging, if we have some antimicrobial component inside, it will actually help in preserving or preventing the contamination in the food, including the textile. You can recently we have commonly heard of antimicrobial mask, antimicrobial aprons, and all those things. So these are all coated with the antimicrobial coatings only. Then of course in air conditioning and ventilation systems, we have the antimicrobial coatings inside. You have heard of antimicrobial paints also. Asian company, they are actually selling a number of antimicrobial paints. Same way in wound dressings, we have a different kind of antimicrobial wound dressings, including the antibiotics and with silver also. So they are commonly available in the market for preventing the infection on the wounds. So you can see what is the clinical need for these coatings in the medical devices. You can see that there's a high mortality ratio. Mortality is related with the contamination of the different kind of medical devices. You can see, and there is high chances of rate of infection in these medical devices, which actually shows that there's a pressing need for antimicrobial coatings for the medical devices. This is the growth rate for the antimicrobial coatings, particularly in the case of medical devices. You can see here the average growth rate. So by year passing, the growth is quite interesting. Like in all the medical devices, there's a the growth rate for these coatings, it's growing quite tremendously. So this is now after this brief introduction that why we need these antimicrobial coatings and materials. This is our expertise in the antimicrobial coatings. We have worked in developing different kind of antimicrobial materials and coatings. I can start with the antimicrobial contact lenses. We have designed some coating on the contact lenses because contact lenses are the medical devices which are also very commonly contaminated by the bacteria, and it can actually contaminate your eye also. Then we have worked on designing the coatings on the catheters, urinary catheters. We have designed some antimicrobial films which have self-defensive property, means whenever the bacteria or any pathogen, they come on these films, they themselves can defend those bacteria. They can actually kill them. Then we have also worked on developing some antimicrobial coatings on the wound dressings. And then recently we have worked on developing some antimicrobial coatings on the fabric surface for personal protective equipments like aprons, masks, and all. So we have done a lot of things on that. And one common thing here is we are using natural compounds like natural polyphenols and natural catecholamines for designing all these like antimicrobial materials. So let's start with the work like transparent and self-defensive PVA films. So these are some of the compounds we have investigated. As I have already mentioned, that we are really thinking of not using antibiotics in these formulations. So then we thought, if not antibiotics, then what we can use of. So we have actually searched for different kind of natural compounds. So we took three category of compounds like catecholamines, then simple polyphenols, then complex polyphenols. So three category of compounds we have used. Sorry. So three category of compounds we have used, and then after this is the just a methodology I'm showing that how we have actually prepared those films. So we have taken the PVA, this is polyvinyl alcohol, it's a polymer. Then we have actually included these catecholamines and polyphenols in that particular PVA, and then we made the solutions. So since these compounds, they can be polymerized. So we have used lacase, which is an enzyme for the polymerization of polyphenols. And then this is without lacase solutions, and this is with lacase solutions. And you can see these are the films we have designed by using this methodology. And I think you can easily see the difference between these two films. This is without lacase, so you can very in few of the films only you can see some color, but in case of with lacase films, you can easily see the brownish or yellowish color in the films, which is actually because of the polymerization of these polyphenols and catecholamines. So to confirm the polymerization, we have done the UV visible analysis, because usually the polymer, they give peaks in the visible region. So we have actually seen the arise of these peaks in the films where the compounds got polymerized. So I'm not going in detail, but this is one of the technique by which we confirm the polymerization of the compound. So we have done it. So this is the mechanism by which these compounds can be polymerized. So this is for the catecholamines, then this is for the catechol, then pyrogalol, how it polymerized, then the quercetin, how it polymerized. So this is just a brief mechanism about how they are actually doing the things. Then this is the mechanical and the thermal properties of all these films of different categories. This is the pristine PVA, and this is with the compounds, and this is actually our yield strength, then Young modulus, then elasticity, and then toughness, and then the thermal stability we are measuring. And we found that in most of, after adding most of these compounds, particularly the one highlighted in orange color, and then the one which are highlighted in purple color, in these particular compounds, we are getting very good enhancement in the mechanical and the thermal properties. So somehow, these compounds, they are actually helping in enhancing the mechanical stability as well as the thermal stability of the films. So this is actually another benefit for us if we are thinking of designing the packaging material or some other antimicrobial film based application. So this is one of the important factors. So that's why we have actually done it. So this is a very important results I'm showing here. So these are the antimicrobial properties of different compounds I mentioned. So we have added all those different compounds, and then we have tested detailed antimicrobial properties of all the films. And these are the different strains you can see. These are different kinds of bacterial strains, gram positive, gram negative. And we found that this is the heat map, which shows that out of all these compounds, there are 3 compounds which shows very interesting antimicrobial properties in for most of the microbial strains. So pyrogalol, hydroquinone, and epinephrine, these are the three compounds which shows very good antimicrobial properties against gram-positive, gram-negative yeast. Particularly, you can see the pyrogalol, it shows antimicrobial properties against all the three different kind of microbes, positive, negative, as well as the yeast. Hydroquinone, it shows the antimicrobial properties against the gram-positive strains also only. Then another is the epinephrine. Here also we got broad spectrum antimicrobial properties, like for gram positive also we are getting the antimicrobial, as well as it for the gram negative also, like Pseudomonas we got the gram negative properties. So this is a very interesting work because we are not using any kind of like antimicrobial peptide or antibiotic, or we haven't used any such compound. We used the natural compounds, and still out of those compounds we found that three compounds they have inherent antimicrobial properties. At the same time, they are very good coating agents also. So if we want to coat those materials on any of the surfaces, we can actually use them as a coating material also. So this is very interesting. Then we have out of these compounds only, we have used one of the compound for coating the contact lenses. So this work is now patented, and the results have been published in good journals, which are mentioned here only. So this is the work schematic we have followed to design the coatings on the lenses. As I have already mentioned, that usually the contact lenses are safe, but if you are not using it with proper hygiene, or in hygiene, not only like you're cleaning your lenses, or but also for example, if in case your contact lens case is contaminated or your contact lens solution is contaminated, it's not like these are random example. If you see the research reports, there are many incidences where the infection it actually arises in the eye due to the contaminated solution, due to the contaminated cases, due to the contaminated lenses. So there are high chances that due to the contaminated lenses, if in case you have a very slight scar in your eye, and we have microbes on the lens, so those microbes can easily infiltrate into your eye tissue, and it can easily damage your eye, complete eye. And then if it infiltrate, I think there is high chance that whole eye can it can actually damage the whole eye. So that is why this concept of creating or designing the antimicrobial coatings on the lenses, it is very, very important. So what we did actually, we have used one compound called dopamine. It is also again a catecholamine, which we are using for coating purpose. And then we have identified two antimicrobial compounds. One is B4010, which is actually an antimicrobial peptide, and then gamma mangosteen, which is again a natural compound from mangosteen fruit, and we are using it also as an antimicrobial purpose. So we have used dopamine for coating and these two as an antimicrobial, and we coated the lenses. You can see here that this is a clean lens, and after the coating it turns actually brown. The antimicrobial compound, since it has NH2 groups, it actually attached to the lens by the Michael type addition and Schiff's base formation. So it is a covalent kind of linking. Whereas for gamma mangosteen, we don't have such groups. So they actually attach non-covalently on the lenses due to the hydrogen bonding interaction or pi stacking interaction. So this is the structure of the gamma mangosteen in red color. So this is how they bind. So this is a covalent kind of coating, and this is a non-covalent kind of coating on the lenses. So you can see the results here. This is here you can see the lenses. This is the at A, it is uncoated lens. UCL means uncoated. So this is an uncoated lens, and you can see All other three are coated lenses. This is with dopamine only. This is with the peptide B4010, as I have mentioned, and this is with gamma mangosteen. So you can see the color is bit brown in due to the polydopamine. So it is little bit brownish in color, although there is color on the lenses, but still you can see here the visibility. For example, you can see the alphabets and the colors and everything. The visibility is not lost even after the coating. So we first of all, after designing the coatings, we have tested its biocompatibility. So this is very important. If you are coating any medical device, we have to first check its biocompatibility, means whether this coating is safe for the cells or not. Like, for example, it is killing the bacteria, that is fine, but it should not kill our cells, the human cells. So we have tested its toxicity against the corneal epithelial cells, the epithelial cells available in our cornea, and then the stomal fibroblast cells. So I have stoma. So in stoma, we have fibroblast cells. So we have checked its cytotoxicity, and we found that here is the toxicity, plot. You can see here that this is the control viability, and this is for PDA coating. This is for with the antimicrobial peptide. So they are quite safe, although we got some reduction in the cell number with gamma mangosteen. So we can say that the antimicrobial peptide coatings are quite safe. Then we have done the antimicrobial analysis of these coated lenses, and we found that not only for gram positive but also for gram negative bacteria, there is a sharp reduction in the bacterial number if when we are putting these coatings on the surface. So that means, and particularly for gram positive bacteria, we are getting 100% eradication of the bacteria from the lens surface if we are actually coating those lenses. Whereas for gram negative bacteria, the reduction is around 90%. 10% bacteria still survive. So for gram negative, these coatings are not they don't kill 100% of the bacteria, but still the results are very good. And then we have actually tested, because the contact lenses are usually we kept in the lens solution. So we checked the efficiency of these lens coatings at different time points, and we found that even after 7 days and 14 days, there is quite good reduction in the bacterial number. Even after soaking. So these coatings are not only antimicrobial, not only safe, but also durable. So you can see here that these are different kind of this is uncoated lens, this is normal polydopamine coating, and this is with the antimicrobial components. So you can see in the last two windows that there is in first two windows, you can see this green color actually shows the bacteria. These are confocal pictures, and bacteria, since we are staining the bacteria, so they shows green color. So you can see here that in the first two cases, in case of uncoated and PDA coated lenses, you can see a lot of bacteria. However, in case of antimicrobial coated lenses, we got very minor attachment of the bacteria on the lenses, and at day 3, there's complete, clearance of the lenses from the bacteria. So this is a very interesting work. This work we have patented also. So we have created very nice, safe, durable coatings on the contact lens surface. So then this is another work we have done, where we have actually designed the antimicrobial coatings on the wound dressings. So here for the wound dressing purpose, there is we have 3 main components in the wound dressings. When we design a wound dressing, we actually take care of 3 things. One is a base material. Base material, usually it should be better to use a biopolymer or a biomaterial, because we have to keep the dressings on the wound itself. So it should be compatible to your wound, skin cells. So we usually prefer a biopolymer for the wound dressing purpose. Then if it is a biopolymer has a one drawback, that they are soft polymers and they can easily degrade. And so we also need a cross-linker for these biopolymers. So the cross-linking agents, in our case, we have used benign cross-linkers. One is polydopamine and another is norepinephrine. So these two compounds we have used as a cross-linkers. Soon I will show that why we have used these particular compounds only. Here I also want to mention that we are the first one, you can say, who actually discovered polydopamine and norepinephrine as a benign cross-linkers for biopolymers. So we have an international patent for this. And then the third component, we have the antimicrobial component, which can be antibiotic, which can be a metal ion, and which can be a cationic polymer also. So these are the wound dressing is a combination of these three things. So first of all, I just want to explain that why we have chosen polydopamine and norepinephrine as a cross-linker, where the things have started. So initially when we read about polydopamine or norepinephrine, it is in 2007 when this, you can see the paper at the lower side, this, it is published in Science. So this is the first paper on polydopamine, which actually shows that this polydopamine can be used to design multifunctional coating on any of the substrate you can think of. Means you can make a coating on glass, you can make a coating on wood, you can make a coating on metal or polymer. Any substrate you can think of, you can actually modify with the polydopamine. Then the reports came that these polydopamine coatings are very biocompatible. Then the reports comes that this antimicrobial polydopamine coating have adhesive properties also. Then in later on in 2009, another related compound came into picture, which is actually norepinephrine. But still, the most of the work reported is on polydopamine. There are few reports on norepinephrine because it is very costly compared to polydopamine. So actually, these polydopamine, they are called bio-inspired polymers. Why they're called bio-inspired polymer? Because its structure, it resemble very much with a protein which is actually extracted from muscles. So muscles, they usually secrete one protein and they use that protein to bind with the rocks and other substrate underwater. So it is, this protein has a gluing property. So same like that protein, this polydopamine have a very structural similarity with that protein. So that is why it is called as muscle inspired compound. So if you see its applications starting from 2007, I have shown till 2013 only, but still if you see the number of applications, every year it is increasing and increasing. And this polydopamine, it shows application in whatever field you can think of, like in drug delivery, in tissue engineering application, in biosensors, in solar cells. I mean, whatever application you can think of, these compounds have the implications. And another important point is, if you want to do a polydopamine coating on any of the substrate, the mechanism is very simple. You just have to take the substrate, you have to put in dopamine solution, and then you have to maintain a pH of 8.5, and your substrate will be coated. And later on, you can actually attach different kind of component like tertiary amines or growth factors or metal ions or antimicrobial peptide, and then different kind of application you can think of, like tissue regeneration, antimicrobial surfaces, cellular adhesion. So the, I mean, chemistry is very simple and very easy to use. So that is why there's a enormous growing interest in this particular field. And this is a simple mechanism that how this dopamine and the related compounds, they polymerize and we get polydopamine or other related polymers. So then this is the one part I have mentioned, cross linkers. So polydopamine, norepinephrine as a cross linkers. So as I mentioned, they are very good coating materials. So what we thought, why not to use these coating materials for nanofibers? Because usually the wound dressings we can easily design by electrospinning technique. So first of all, I just want to give a brief idea what is electrospinning. It is actually a electrohydrodynamic process in which what we do, we actually take polymer solution in the syringe and we apply a very high potential between the needle of the syringe and the substrate. And then what will happen, the polymer solution, because of the high voltage, it's actually stretched and splayed in the form of nanofibers, and these nanofibers will be collected on the collector plate. So if you see the voltage here is involved, it is not high, it is actually very high. So usually in the electrospinning we use 12 kV to 30 kV. So very high voltage is involved in this particular process, but the fibers you will get is actually amazing fibers you will get by using this particular electrospinning technique. And you can actually get the fibers. You can see here the SCM pictures of the fibers. So you can actually get the fibers in a particular orientation, in a particular pattern, by using different kind of collector plates, like rotating collectors, like parallel strip collectors or conveyors or rotating discs or flat plates. So you can actually not only you will get the nanofibers, but you will also get the nanofibers in a proper orientation, even aligned orientation in a circular manner, or in any kind of pattern. You can actually design these nanofibers using electrospinning technique. You can see here, this is the SCM picture of the nanofibers which are collected using the electrospinning technique. And different kind of needles we can use to actually to design these these fibers, like single needle, multiple needles. So actually this electrospinning is a very scalable process. Pilot scale machines are available to design electrospun cloth. So this is quite advanced technique now. So you can see here that from a few nanometers to 100 micrometers size nanofibers you can actually design using this electrospinning technique. And there are wide variety of choices or materials which you can spin in the form of nanofibers using the electrospinning techniques, starting from the dipeptides, crown ethers, supramolecular assemblies, then your natural polymers like gelatin, collagen, chitosan, or synthetic polymers like PCl, PVA. So any kind of, including the DNA. So you can easily get reports where people have electrospun DNA nanofibers using the electrospinning technique. So it is a very versatile technique. So when we thought of designing the wound dressings, as I have already mentioned, we have thought of biopolymers. So one disadvantage of biopolymer I have already mentioned, that they can easily degrade. So they have poor mechanical properties. They lose their nanofiber morphology very easily in aqueous condition. They readily degrade, and we need post spinning crosslinker for the biopolymer. So here we stuck actually. We need some crosslinker which are biocompatible. Biocompatible means it should not kill the cells. So we actually went through the literature. We have seen many crosslinkers like glutaraldehyde, glyceraldehyde, dextrin, genepin, EDCNHS. So many crosslinkers were available for the biopolymers, but they have their own problems. Many crosslinker, they are cytotoxic in nature. In some cases, they are very time consuming and they require organic solvents. So there are many issues related with the crosslinkers which are available for the biopolymers. So then we thought that this polydopamine coating, since polydopamine has gluing properties, it should have the capability to bind the nanofibers. And in cross-linking, what we need actually, we need binding only. So we thought of using this polydopamine as a binding agent for the nanofibers. So we did the same thing which is available in the literature. How they were coating it, as I have mentioned, that any substrate you put in the dopamine solution at high pH, you will get the coating. So that is the same thing we have done. We took the gelatin nanofibers. You can see very beautiful nanofibers of gelatin, which have diameter of 300 to 350 nanometers. And this is the TM picture of the gelatin nanofibers. And then as soon as we put in the dopamine solution at the pH of 8.5, this happened. So what happened is a whole nanofiber morphology, it get deteriorated. So complete loss of the fiber morphology. So which actually we don't want. So we thought then what to do. So this is how then we done our cross-linking. What we did, this is the electrospinning, as I mentioned you. Here we are putting the potential, and this is gelatin nanofibers, and the lower picture is for the collagen nanofibers. So these are two different proteins. So you can see the nanofibers here. So what we did when we did the spinning, during the spinning itself, we put the dopamine. So this solution is basically gelatin plus dopamine, and then we spin it. So here is after spinning. So you can see here, as we have put the dopamine, you can see the fibers, they got merged at the junctions. Same way you can see here also. In collagen also, we got some binding at the interface. Now we want to polymerize the dopamine into polydopamine, which I have mentioned that we need high pH condition, alkaline medium. For as here you can see, for polymerizing dopamine to polydopamine, we need pH of 8.5. So what we did, instead of using the liquid media to attain the pH, we use vapor phase method. So we actually put the dopamine inside nanofibers, and we put in a desiccator where we have ammonium carbonate. So in ammonium carbonate in the desiccator, what are the reactions happening? Ammonium carbonate, it actually gives rise to ammonium hydroxide and the carbonate ions in the chamber, and this creates a alkaline medium, and the pH is around 8.5 again. So what happened when we put these dopamine rich nanofiber mat into this chamber? So you can see here the dopamine inside the fibers, they got polymerized, and this kind of morphology, the cross-linked morphology, we have attained. So you can see now this is gelatin nanofibers with polydopamine. So you can see here the fibers diameter, it got increased also, and you can see the complete merging of these nanofibers. So they actually merged at the junction. So you can see the TM pictures. It shows the cross-linking of the nanofibers. So this technology of cross-linking, we have already patented it. So these are the advantages of vapor phase polymerization. You can see the cross-linking morphology is there, and these coatings are very biocompatible. You can see a very healthy cells, even if we are using 1% polydopamine or 2% polydopamine. The viability studies, they shows that there is no reduction in the cell number when we are using these coatings. That means these coatings are very safe. And then very interestingly, when we are coating the gelatin nanofibers with these coatings, they show fluorescence properties also. So this is actually unexpected. We never expected it. When we were looking at the cells, we saw the fibers are also colored. So that is how we get to know that the nanofibers have fluorescence properties also. Then this is the mechanical plot, stress strain plot. So you can see here that once we cross-link the gelatin nanofibers using polydopamine, so the mechanical strength, the tensile strength of the nanofibers as well as the elasticity of the nanofibers, they got improved. So all the results, even the roughness also got reduced after coating. So all the results, they are quite interesting. So then after what we did, now this is the combination of the crosslinker and the base material. The third component, as I have mentioned, it is the antimicrobial component. So in the first study, we have actually added antibiotics only. So we have done different kind of antibiotics like amphotericin B, vancomycin, then the combination of antifungal drug caspofungin and tobramycin. Tobramycin is actually broad spectrum antimicrobial drug, antibacterial drug. So we have actually used different combinations of drugs into the fibers, and you can see their morphology and you can see this diffusion result. So little bit explanation want to give here. So here you can see this is a diffusion picture, and this clean this yellow color is actually bacteria. So you can see here that where we have put the wound dressing material, there is no bacterial growth. So that means this material has antibacterial properties. Same way here also you can see that where the material is available, there is no growth of this yellow color bacteria. And even in this case also you can see that for gram positive, gram negative, as well as the fungus, there is no growth of these microorganisms. So that means that these nanofibrous wound dressings, they have very good antimicrobial properties. And we tried to immerse these wound dressings in PBS, and then also tested their antimicrobial properties at different time points. And we found that even after 20 days of soaking these dressings into PBS, these materials, they have consistently having the antimicrobial properties. That means that they are very durable wound dressing materials. One very interesting point I want to highlight here, that one thing we have noticed, you can see here the last plot where we have actually mentioned about the different antibiotics at the X scale, and then the number of hydroxyl group. This number indicates the number of hydroxyl groups. So what we found that as the number of hydroxyl groups are increasing, the durability of wound dressings are more. And if the number of hydroxyl groups are less, so the wound dressing can be used for 1 or 2 days only. So so then we thought that maybe because polydopamine also have hydroxyl groups and these antibiotics also have the hydroxyl groups, so we need a hydroxyl group in the antibiotics to bind with the matrix, so that there's a extended durability of these wound dressings. So this is one conclusion we have drawn from this work. This is the animal studies. So the dressings we have designed, we have actually tested it for with the animal studies also. So this is the pig. So for we have used the burn model for testing these wound dressings. So in the burn model, what we are doing, we are taking the pig. This is the device by which we are creating the wounds on the pig. So you can see here, this is the wound actually. So we are actually by this heated device, we are actually creating the burn wounds on the pig, and then we are putting our dressings on the wound surface, different kind of dressing. So this is the control dressing. Control means we are not putting anything on the wounds. Then this is pure gelatin, means no antibiotic inside. Then this is the antibiotic loaded. Van means vancomycin. So this is antibiotic loaded dressings. And these are the results for the commercially available silver based dressing. So we have compared it with the commercially available dressing also. And you can see here the wound closure for different kind of dressings. And you can see that for vancomycin electrospun dressings, the wound closure area, it is very, very good compared to the other other dressings. And this is the plot showing the percentage wound closure for different kind of the control as well as the different kind of dressings. And we got significant enhancement in the wound closure compared to untreated and the gelatin. And and the wound closure is very good. it is actually comparable with the more than the commercially available wound dressings. So then, although the results were very fantastic, but one thing we faced problem is these dressings, they are very tough actually. They are very tight dressings. So we need to soak it into the water before putting onto the wound. So in the next set of study, what we did, we actually spin the fibers on a cotton gauze. So these are the dressings we received on the cotton gauze. This is the SCM morphology. And this is how we have put on the pig now. So now it is on the cotton gauze. So this is again the results, and you can see here that again the antibiotic loaded dressings, they performed very good comparable to the commercially available dressings. And this is just the same dressing after removing from the wound. So you can see here that even during removal, there is no interference with the wound healing and due to these dressings. And even the nanofiber morphology is retained even after removing the dressing from the wound. So now they are very stable dressings. So this is the paper we have published with this, which is in ACS/AMI journal, which is very good. And this is actually one of the, I think, rank 1 journal in biomaterials. So we have published the study in biomaterials also, and we have an international patent on this particular work. Then this is the last work I am going to show on this platform. So this is actually development of antimicrobial hydrophobic fabric coatings. So the base material is same like polydopamine. So we have used different kind of antimicrobial. We have tested different kind of antimicrobial components like silver nanoparticles, copper nanoparticles, silver nitrate, copper chloride. So different kind of the nano antimicrobial combinations we have tested. And this is we have developed on different 3 different fabrics we have chosen to design the dressing, the coatings. So you can see the cotton fabric, which is very common for the masks. Polypropylene fabric, again, it's a very common and popular material for mask fabrication. And this is the activated carbon fabric. So all the 3 fabrics, they have a high utility in personal protective equipments. And we have tried to design the coatings on these fabrics. And you can see in some cases, particularly like copper nanoparticle, copper nitrates. So we got very uniform coatings on the fabric. Different kind of fabrics you can see here. Even this copper nanoparticle, even on polypropylene, we got very beautiful coating. So we got the coating, and then we have tested its wettability also. So what we found is that these coatings are super hydrophobic in nature. Even after 90 minutes, you can see this is at the 0 minute, we put a drop on the fabric, and even after 90 minutes, the drop is intact here. Here also you can see after 90 minutes the drop is still there. That means we actually related this with our present COVID situation, that for example, now what we are saying is that if somebody is sneezing, the droplet transmission is there, the virus transmission through droplet is there. So what we are saying is that since this droplet even after 90 minutes is still on the fabric and it is not absorbing, so of course in 90 minutes, if it is not absorbing, means due to the lotus effect and all, it will actually drain out. So there are very less chances that this drop will actually absorb into the fabric and it can reach to your mouth or nose area. Which does this super hydrophobicity, it is actually providing another protective route for the virus transmission. So the third thing is we have done the SCM pictures of these coatings. So you can see here that this is nanoparticles. We never got the high magnification pictures yet, but we are doing it. So uniform coating we can see on these fabric fibers. So coating is there. We have tested it by SEM micrography, and this is a dynamic contact angle results, which actually shows that particularly for copper nitrate and for copper chloride, even after this 60 minutes, that we have still more than 60 degree contact angle intact on the fabric. And this is the antimicrobial properties of the coated fabric. We got only for one strain yet, and for E. coli, which is actually a very common pathogen responsible for infections. So you can see here, once we put the fabric, you can see a clean zone. That means the bacteria got killed by this fabric. So which is very interesting results. So this is just a mechanism we have proposed, that how basically by airborne transmission, and these viruses can be transmitted, and by using this particular fabric based PPEs, we can actually protect ourselves by three protection routes. One is by hydrophobicity, another is by the inherent antimicrobial properties of the fabric, which actually helps in killing the microbes, and the third is the reduction, the porosity of the fabric will be reduced due to this coating. So you can see here, this is the void available on the fabric, but when we coated the fabric with the coating, you can see the void space, it is completely covered. So definitely the permeation of the virus or the bacteria inside the fabric, it will be reduced due to the reduction in the void space. So these are the conclusions. So self-defensive antimicrobial coatings can be designed using polyphenols with inherent antimicrobial properties and good polymerization capability and coating capability, and safe and efficient cross-linkers we have designed for hydrogel electrospun polymers. Then biologically relevant metal ion in combination of PDA crosslinker, they also confer a very good antimicrobial properties. And this methodology can be extended to design durable antimicrobial wound dressings with long-term antimicrobial properties. Then the polyphenols with inherent antimicrobial properties broaden the scope of tissue engineering and wound dressings applications. And using catechol amine coating chemistry, durable antimicrobial coating can be designed on different medical devices as well as on fabric surface. So in the end, what I want to say is for different kind of antimicrobial coatings, we need a base material, we need a cross-linker, and then or the coating material or a cross-linking material, and the third component is the antimicrobial component. So these are some of the publication or my scientific contribution. We have, I have nearly 57 international publications and one technology we have transferred recently. And then I have 5 patents with my name, and then some book chapters also I have published. So I want to acknowledge my CSIR AMPRI team. So Dr. Avinish Kumar Srivastava, who is director, CSIR AMPRI, then Dr. Muhammad Akram Khan, who is actually head of our division, and my fellow scientists who are actually actively involved and helped me in different research activities. These are our collaborators from Singapore and India, including JNU and AIIMS. And then these are my PhD students who are always there for helping in the work. And these are the funding support we received. And thank you very much all for your kind attention. So now I welcome the questions.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Dr. Chetna, for a wonderful and informative talk and fantastic slide. In fact, indeed, very elaborated work, fantastic work.
Thank
So
you.
I have a couple of questions, which
Yeah,
is
sure.
maybe not very much related to the antimicrobial property, but rather coating. That I just want to know the bonding between the coating and the substrate. In some slide, initial slides you have mentioned non-covalent, and in the left side it is covalent.
Yeah.
So does XPS cannot tell the type of the bonding? So how we can ensure that what kind of bonding exists?
Okay, so basically, okay, I'm just going to that slide. Yeah, so here, this is the slide you are talking about. So basically, the bonding, what we are talking is actually between the coating agent and the antimicrobial component. It is
Okay,
not,
okay,
yeah. So it is not about the contact lens and the coating material. It is between the coating material and the antimicrobial component.
hmm.
So that thing we can easily do by, if this kind of thing we want to do, we can easily do by FTIR analysis. Because if it is a covalent bonding, so definitely the new bonds will generate, and we can confirm it by FTIR analysis. But
Huh.
but what you are asking is the
Yeah.
substrate and the coating.
Treatment, I'm asking, suppose there is a oxide particle, for example.
Mhm,
Okay, oxide part chlorate is there, or any simple oxide,
mhm,
and we are coating suppose by graphene or graphene oxide. So
mhm.
how we can ensure the bonding, ensure the mechanical and chemical durability or stability, and what are the
Mhm.
characterization we can do to, I mean, XPS, I think it will tell about the
Bonding.
surface composition, right?
No, actually, it is not like that. The thing is, XPS, yeah, XPS will give you the elemental composition as well as the bonding pattern also, because it is based on the binding energy. So, what I'm saying is, by using XPS, you can actually reach the interface also, because in XPS we are actually putting the beam. So beam, you want to put at what level, at what thickness, that you can decide. So you can actually take the XPS analysis for the interface also. So you can do at the different depth. So you can take from the surface, then deep in the bulk, as well as at the interface of the your substrate and the coating. So if there is any bonding change at the interface, you can say that, okay, there is a bonding, generation of new bonding. Regarding what you are saying, the coating stability, particularly on the metal substrates or such substrates, there are measurements called tribological measurements, tribological
Like
studies.
knife scratch.
Yeah. So there actually we scratch the coating multiple times, and we see in how many cycles we actually got a scratch on the your substrate. So tribological studies are very helpful in that case.
Okay, so that ensured that this coating is stable. I mean, it will not come out while
Yeah, stable.
transportation.
Yeah, yeah.
So normally, graphene, I think,
Yes.
Matt, you have worked on graphene, right? You have a paper on graphene related.
I have worked on graphene. From there only, I'm telling that if you see those papers,
Mhm.
there we have actually mentioned about the XPS at the interface also, how we are doing the interfacial engineering and everything we have mentioned. And
Okay.
even we have mentioned there the tribological testing also, that how we are actually testing the stability of the coating with the increasing number of cycles, how we are actually testing it. So it is complete details are there in those papers.
So from TM also, the coating can be understood from like,
TM, we can see the coating thickness. We can see the coating thickness.
okay.
Yeah,
And with
by
graphene,
sandwich model. Yeah. Yes.
normally making covalent bond. Maybe it's a very trivial question to a person who knows a lot.
Covalent bond, it depends actually on the substrate, what kind of substrate you are using. For example, if you are
Like
saying
oxide, for example.
oxides, again in oxides, like for example, indium tin oxide, we have OH groups on it. So, if we
Okay.
have such groups which can be covalently binded,
Okay.
then yeah.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much for the elaborate answer. I personally I will meet, and then I personally
Sure,
want to
sure,
learn
sure,
something from. It's an
sure.
excellent and elaborative work. Excellent work. Thank you, ma'am. Jyoti,
Thank you,
ma'am,
Dr.
Dr. Neetu,
Sudeshna.
yeah, if any question, or you can give the vote of thanks and conclude this session. Yeah, Jyoti, ma'am, or Neetu,
Good
ma'am,
afternoon.
please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sudeshna ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I, Dr. Neetu Paliwal, Dean Faculty of Science, here to present vote of thanks to today's webinar. I would like to thank our guest, Dr. Chetna Dhan, Senior Scientist, CSIR MP, for making excellent presentation, ma'am, and making this webinar interesting and meaningful. Again, I thank you so much for your informative session. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I would like to thank Dr. Sudeshna for conducting the informative series of webinar. And I also like to thank IPSC team for their support, and thanks to everyone. Thank you so much.